If you've read Boruto chapter 18, then it should be pretty obvious that Kawaki finally is getting that long awaited power boost. In Vortex, Kawaki was severely power crept by all the characters around him, to the point where it almost seemed like he was getting diffed for comedic effect. But obviously this was a narrative decision the writers made to align with Kawaki's character and personality, where a lot of his actions are driven by that thirst for power. But honestly, it's about damn time, because Kawaki, when he's some weak bum, is no fun to watch. But my oh my, when this guy can throw hands, bro is straight aura farming every other panel. And with his limiters being removed, he's about to be contending with Boruto in the aura maxing department. Now trolling aside, in this video I want to discuss exactly how strong Kawaki will be after Amado changes his limiters to be more focused towards his attacking potency. But before we get into that, as always, if you do go on to enjoy this video, then please consider liking, as it helps this video get pushed out to more and more people. And if you want to support the channel and see more content like this, then subscribing is the best way of killing two birds with one stone. Anyways, with that said, let's get into this video. So according to Amado, Kawaki had been adjusted to where his attacking potency was significantly reduced, but in doing so, Amado described it like making Kawaki all but immortal. Now I don't know about you, but in my eyes, if you can make someone borderline immortal, I dread to see what happens when all of this is instead funneled into his attacking power. But I also think that maybe Kawaki will gain a few abilities along with this upgrade to his power. Amado's goal obviously is to keep Kawaki alive at all costs, so Kawaki can eventually revive his daughter Akabe, which to me is still pretty suspicious, because why would he not get Kawaki to just do that now? The only option I see is Kawaki refuses to give up his karma while Boruto, Code and the Shinju are all out there, with Kawaki knowing that he relies heavily on his karma for his attacking potency. So I presume Kawaki and Amado have an agreement like they have discussed in this chapter that we just had, where once Kawaki has dealt with everyone he deems a threat, he will then implant the karma onto Amado's daughter. But I'm going to do an entire video on why Amado is still very suspicious despite him having an explanation behind most of the things he does. So let me know if that's something you want me to go more deeply into in the comments down below. Anyways, getting back to Kawaki, granting someone with the defensive and regenerative abilities to make them borderline immortal is possibly the greatest feat we have seen from any character thus far. The only problem we have is the scale of what we have seen with Kawaki. Kawaki briefly fought Jura, he briefly fought Boruto, and he briefly fought Damon in part 1. Notice how I say briefly for all of these, because the fights never really lasted further than a couple of punches. Yes, he did end up losing these, and we know that this is because he had next to no power in his attacks due to Amado's tampering. But at the same time, he wasn't damaged seemingly at all from any of this, which goes back to the idea that he is supposed to be immortal. Now you could argue that none of these people were actually trying to kill Kawaki, and technically speaking you would be correct in saying that. Compared to what Jura hit Boruto with, the punch Kawaki got hit was absolutely nothing. But we also have to consider the fact that Kawaki, after temporarily being knocked out, was perfectly fine after all of this. And for reference, Kawaki and Code were both hit by a very similar attack, but Code was not able to stand up and Kawaki was just getting started. Now again, you could argue Code was hit by Nozuhiko, but Boruto was trying to show Kawaki the disparity in terms of power between them two. To let Kawaki know, stay the hell out of my way because you can't do anything to me right now. And I'd say he did that pretty effectively with Kawaki's new resolve. And subsequently, I don't think it's out of the realms of possibilities that Kawaki and Code received a similar level of power from Boruto's attack, which would show directly how insane Kawaki's defensive powers are. And Kawaki wasn't even using his karma at the point of being hit by Boruto. Also, something which is unclear is the karma what is making Kawaki seemingly indestructible? Or is it just his base capabilities? Because I would assume that Amado altered Kawaki's karma in order to do this, rather than readily having the technology to make Kawaki that robust in his base. But in Amado's eyes, surely that isn't a foolproof way of keeping Kawaki safe, as he would heavily rely on Kawaki always going into his karma form in a battle. Otherwise, he runs the risk of Kawaki being killed. And there is still so many questions that I have about how this works. But because Amado seems to cherry pick the amount of information or the type of information he gives to certain people, it's very difficult to kind of gauge where Kawaki is actually at. And because Kawaki was such fodder in terms of the power he could utilize, the fights he was involved in were over too quickly to show the insane levels of defensive feats like he is said to have. Which then makes transferring this into how strong he may be also very, very difficult. But I think we can instead take this from a narrative perspective on how strong Kawaki should be to make it make sense in terms of the story. So as soon as Kawaki was introduced, there was immediately an almost narrative rivalry between him and Boruto, which directly paralleled that of Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry in both their ideologies and levels in power. And what I mean by this is throughout Naruto, the power dynamic between him and Sasuke was literally a constant shifting battle backwards and forwards. Sasuke started off stronger due to his innate talent, and Naruto's lack of control over Kurama's powers. But once Naruto used Kurama's power, it was clear that he was stronger than Sasuke. And this back and forth continued when Naruto would show feats where he was clearly stronger than Sasuke, and Sasuke would do the same, much like Boruto and Kawaki alike. And I'll go into that similarity more deeply in a second. And then obviously you had the big finale in the Valley of the End in part 1, where Sasuke narrowly beat Naruto. Then in Shippuden it continued once again. Sasuke trained harder than Naruto, which meant he was able to be stronger than him out of the gates. Naruto then learned Sage Mode and overtook Sasuke, but don't quote me on that because I don't know the exact power scaling in that moment. But Sasuke then got his mangekyou, which meant they were about even. Naruto learned KCM 1 and KCM 2, and then Sage Mode plus KCM 2, which then led him to be stronger than Sasuke, but then they both got the power of the 6-pass Sage Mode. And once again, a Valley of the End battle to show the final victor, but it ended up being even. This constant shifting in the power dynamic between these two, like I just described, was what kept us readers invested in the series. Obviously, the entire story was the main reason that most people were invested, but for me personally, never knowing who was actually stronger at a certain moment, or who was going to get the next power up to close that gap in power, or surpass the other one was really fun to watch. And it's pretty obvious where I'm trying to go with this, as this is literally word for word, bar for bar, the exact same situation with Kawaki and Boruto. So let me break it down. When Kawaki was introduced, he was stronger than Boruto because of his proficiency with the Karma. Kawaki then went on to teach Boruto how to use his Karma properly, which then showed that Boruto had surpassed Kawaki, which was shown in their clash. Boruto then goes on to extend this lead with his Karma V2, but Kawaki then gained his own version and then surpassed Boruto. Then you had your almost Valley of the End style fight which paralleled Naruto and Sasuke. We had Karma V2 Kawaki versus Boroshiki, which ended up with Kawaki ultimately winning. We then go on to the time skip, and Boruto is clearly much stronger than Kawaki now. But now it's a time where we see Kawaki surpass Boruto once again. And the reason Boruto was so hesitant to provide Kawaki with this information that Amado has placed limiters on Kawaki's attacking potency is because Kashin Koji likely would have made him aware that if Boruto is to tell Kawaki this, in the short term Kawaki will become stronger. And with Boruto being the main target of Kawaki, his life will be in danger despite what Kawaki assured Boruto of, dealing with the Shinju first. This moment where Kawaki gets his limiters removed or altered is going to be that classic example of a concept used so heavily in Naruto of the shifting power dynamic between the two main characters. And with Kawaki and Boruto resembling Naruto and Sasuke's conflict so heavily, it's safe to assume that this will be another one of those moments where the power levels shift in one person's favour. So using this to gauge roughly where Kawaki is going to be in terms of power, he's almost certainly going to be stronger than current Boruto is. And also because I strongly believe that Kawaki will be going on the Sand Village mission to save the Konoha Strike Squad, who I think are currently just trying to stall until Kawaki gets there. Kawaki is going to be a level in between Jura and Boruto, or Jura and the Shinju, as I think that this mission will not only be the first showcase of Sarada's mangekyou powers, but also how insanely busted Kawaki is without his limiters. And I'm just going to warn you now, be ready for the aura farm that is going to be on display from Kawaki here. And going a step further, I think Kawaki will be the one to defeat Ryu. And I also think that Kawaki will be the one to almost kill Matsuri, who will actually have already consumed Konohamaru by this point, and will manage to get away back to the Ten Tails realm to tell Jura about how insanely strong Kawaki has become. Or at least that's my prediction on how this mission will roughly go down. And I have already said that I'm going to do an entire video going slightly more in depth into the actual plan to successfully carry out that mission, so watch out for when that one gets released. Also, I think with Kawaki's limited removal, there is going to be a showing of Damon here, where we will see a little skirmish between Damon and Kawaki, and we will get to see for starters how strong Damon is post time skip, and also the fullest extent of Kawaki's power, as I don't think the Shinju will be strong enough to draw out Kawaki's full strength in that battle. And going back to the dynamic between Boruto and Kawaki shifting, I think that Boruto's Karma will be the way that he's able to once again surpass Kawaki. But for both of these guys, Limitless Kawaki won't be enough to defeat Jura in the final battle, and just Karma Boruto won't be enough to defeat Jura either. So after another shift in power dynamic between these two characters, Boruto's Karma giving him the edge against Kawaki, they will both need a final power up, very reminiscent of the Sage of Six Pass mode between Naruto and Sasuke that allowed them to defeat Madara/Kaguya. And I think the power up specifically will be for each character. Kawaki will get a Karma V3, and Boruto's will be the Jougan. And both of these power-ups will propel them to be able to take down Jura. And subsequently, the battle on top of Hokage Monument will be a carbon copy of the final battle in Naruto Shippuden after they have defeated Jura. So without seeing the power of Limitless Kawaki directly, I can provide you guys with the narrative implications behind how strong Kawaki is actually going to be. But with that said, I do want to do some predictions on the additional powers that Kawaki might have after reaching this awakened state. But quickly before I do that, I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments down below. Will Kawaki without limiters look any different from before? Or do you believe he will look the same but just be physically stronger? Because I honestly can't decide which route I think the writers will take with this one. Anyways, getting back to the discussion, Kawaki told Amado that not only must he change his way that Kawaki is coded to put all his defense into his offense, a bit like the Lakers, but also kit him out with as much ninja tech as Amado can fit inside of Kawaki's body. So Kawaki's main use with Amado's ninja tech thus far is the way that he's almost able to crystallize his blood or body to make weapons ranging from straight up a barrier to a blade. So maybe like we saw with Code, where the sheer amount of claw marks he could create was lower due to his limiters. Maybe the amount of rock, I really don't know what to call this, but you know what I mean, is lesser than if Kawaki's limiters were being removed. Or maybe just the strength of the rock is going to be higher after Amado makes these adjustments. As we saw that Jura was able to easily shatter this when Kawaki tried to use it to defend himself against him. So maybe to show this surge in power, the rocks will almost become impenetrable. As a message from the writers to be to us readers, look, these rocks shattered like glass before, but now it's as strong as diamonds. Just to show that Kawaki isn't messing around anymore. Also, Kawaki's rods are obviously going to be much faster now, maybe even surpassing the likes of Ishiki's, and that's another thing that I need to discuss. Kawaki is actually just using Ishiki's power, so does it make sense for him to be able to surpass Ishiki's level of strength? And I think that the answer to that is yes. If you completely disregard defense, which Ishiki obviously was very strong defensively too, and put it into offense, I think that it makes sense for Kawaki to be stronger physically than Ishiki was, which basically puts him at a level of barrier mode levels of raw power, or just above there at a rough guess. And in terms of the new powers Kawaki may get, well, I think that comes down to the Dojutsu which Kawaki has. As on one hand, there is a strong possibility that he could unlock the Byakugan, but I think that will instead come as a secondary awakening of the Karma V3, which I think will be Kawaki's final power-up, like I've already described. As the Karma V2 thus far has shown that it only takes the Otsutsuki's primary Dojutsu, as Kawaki was only able to get the Kokugan, and Boruto, instead of getting the Rinnegan, was only able to get the Byakugan. Instead, I think Kawaki will actually utilize the other parts of this Dojutsu that Ishiki had. Kawaki primarily uses the ability to shrink himself, other objects, or summon things from the Daikokuten realm. But there are seemingly 5 other abilities attached to this Dojutsu, as it resembles a Dharma wheel, which has 8 separate paths, each representing different things. Which to me implies that there will be more abilities with this Dojutsu that just haven't been showcased yet. And this is literally one of Shibai's Dojutsu. It just has to have more abilities than what's been shown to us thus far. And maybe this changing in Kawaki's limiters will allow Kawaki to use his Dojutsu to its fullest extent. And if you want me to do an entire video behind the hidden powers of the Kokugan, then make sure to let me know it in the comments down below. Anyways, that is going to be a wrap for this video. As always, if you did enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button just so this video gets pushed out to more and more people. If you are enjoying the content at the moment and want to see more, then subscribing is the best way of letting YouTube know that you want to see more of my content in the future. And also on the other hand, it helps out the channel massively. And be sure to let me know your thoughts on how strong Limitless Kawaki is going to be in the comments down below, as well as anything you want to add or disagree with as well. But with that all said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.